right, welcome back to the Super Centex Podcast. Chad and DJ and Brice. I guess I'm referring to myself.
You're Brice.
You're Brice.
I am Brice. How are y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
Yeah. Much better than last week, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were like sick last week, right?
Yeah.
You had Austinitis.
Austinitis. For sure. I won't be catching that for another couple weeks at least. So
you won't be getting Austinitis again.
Hopefully not. But
she's going to ACL.
Oh, that's a whole different thing.
I mean,
we can do a whole podcast.
Yeah.
We can do a whole podcast just on that. But
yeah.
So I'm calling this the fantasy football edition of the Super Centex podcast. That's just the theme that I've come up with for today.
And I like that because my fantasy football team is the only team I believe in anymore.
Mine's 0-1, so I'm less believing.
See, I won and beat the league median this week. Do y'all do that in your league, Brice?
Mm-mm.
You have an extra game each week against the league median.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
We do have 1 week this year. This is getting in the weeds, but where rather than play a specific opponent in your league, you're just playing the league, and the top 4 teams will get a win, and the bottom 4 teams will get a loss.
But that's what we do. We do that every week, though.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, bringing it back to high school football. So on Thursday, we have a dream matchup between China Spring and University at Waco ISD. These are 2 teams that obviously don't meet very often, which got me to thinking about games that we don't really see rather than the ones that we do see. So if you guys were to pick 2 Central Texas teams to square off in a fantasy matchup, and classifications be damned. I mean, we could have a 2A versus a 6A if you want. Mart versus a Midway. Maybe I'm stealing your answer. I don't know. Who would you want to see play?
Well, I have 2 answers to this question, and they're a little bit different.
Off there? Out there?
Yeah. I want the 2022 China Spring Cougars or this iteration of University Trojans.
That would be fun.
Yeah. But then on a different level, I want to see Abbott play 11-man football against like Mart or, Axtell or one of those like powerhouse 2A teams. Because I feel like Abbott would transition really well to 11-man. I mean, they have guys.
They have the numbers.
They have the numbers.
Yeah.
Honestly, they could very easily be successful as a 2A team.
I like it. Okay. Chad?
Okay, so when I was in elementary school, I actually have 2 answers like DJ did, but I'll start with this one. When I was in elementary school at Woodway Elementary on the mean streets of Woodway, our big rival was the Robinson Rockets.
Mm-hmm.
Going way back, and that would be fun to see a Midway Robinson matchup again. Now, my other answer to this question is like, how on 2K you can like pick like past teams to play each other, kind of like DJ did picking the China Spring team.
Mm-hmm.
But I would go further back. I would have LaDainian Tomlinson University versus Tanner Mordecai Midway.
Ooh, I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah. Well, that kind of inspires me because I would love to see Rashad Paul Bremond versus Quan Cosby Mart. I mean, and those 2 are the same classification, both 2A schools, and exceptional, just crazy players. I mean, they were generational,
both ways, and everything.
Generational talents at their school. So that would be a lot of fun if we were keeping it just to like 2024. Man, I should have thought about my own answer. Yeah, I guess I'll have to think about it some more. But I do remember a couple seasons ago, we were really clamoring for a West Lorena matchup in like the state semifinals. And I love it when West and Lorena play in anything. I mean, they're good 3A programs in every sport, really. So
It doesn't seem like maybe I'm just not remembering very well, but it doesn't seem like the West Trojans and the Troy Trojans meet up as often as you would think they would.
yeah, they are in the same district right now in volleyball.
Hmm.
So they will play in volleyball, but yeah, probably you're right, probably right. I mean, they play a little bit though.
Hmm.
Um, but not so much in football. You're
I
right.
just don't remember that many Trojan Bowls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, the the comment about Robinson made me chuckle because so DJ, there was a time I remember many years ago in the newsroom
Oh my gosh.
where
I don't know if we can
Was
say
bagging
this.
on some girl that made the Super Centex team. I don't remember her name, and he was like, "Oh, she went to the Robinson School of Makeup Application."
Oh boy. I'm gonna have to move houses or something.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's this Midway elitist coming out right there, buddy."
The only Robinson trash talk that I will allow is from my friends who went to Robinson. Okay.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. That's
It's
fair. That's fair. No, that was so
like
that
same with my high school.
I still love that comment.
that comment, let me like cover my butt a little bit here. That comment was based on 1980s and 1990s Robinson. I have
Well,
no
fair enough.
opinion about how the ladies apply their makeup there anymore. I mean, women don't really wear makeup anymore, do
Chad's
they?
just
It's just
digging
kind of like,
himself out of that hole.
yeah.
All right, let's move on. So we can't have a fantasy. Well, I almost skipped a question. So, back to this week's fantasy matchup, um, which is actually grounded in reality. So, obviously, as DJ alluded to, one of the China Spring teams from maybe the past couple years would probably give this university team a better shot. But what about this year? What about this game Thursday night? I mean, is China Spring capable of pulling off the upset?
It's possible. I think more than anything, and I talked to both Tyler Beatty and Karen Johnson yesterday, and these are two former Baylor guys. They know each other. They're became friends through mutual friends because I think Coach Johnson was a freshman when Coach Beatty was you know about to leave to
Hmm.
about to transfer. So but they know each other, and so it's kind of like a friendly rivalry, and that's kind of the lead that I went with on my capsule. But yeah, I think obviously the Trojans have the advantage here, but they've kind of been playing a little sloppy.
Hmm.
And as we saw with China Spring in their first game, those like mistakes, those like penalties and turnovers really hurt them, and they kind of clean that up in the Bastrop game. Um, so both teams are going to have to play perfect football. Where I feel like China Spring, what I want to see China Spring do is throw the ball more because Matthew Battles is a scrappy quarterback. He's going to run the ball. He's really athletic, and it's not that he can't throw. I think, there was a little bit of accuracy issues and, he was launching that ball in
Mm.
the game against Franklin. But University is a really young secondary. And it's more not that, those guys are just lacking experience. Like they've got the talent and the athleticism, but I feel like if University can throw the ball, they might be able to find some success there. Obviously, they're up against an offense that's got London Smith, Kate Bynum, Savoy Nichols, JD Bell, LD Evans, right? And even on defense, they've been doing really well. I mean, Joaquin Martinez, who was our defensive newcomer of the year, he put up 17 tackles this
Mm.
past week. So, um, I just feel like China Spring wants to win. They have to be perfect. They have to throw the ball, and find a way to stop, you know, University from doing the things that they do well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what everything I hear DJ saying, I'm not sure who. I mean, I'm not sure it would be an upset if China Spring won. I picked China Spring in
Mm.
our picks box. I don't know that. I mean, somebody that knows more than I do, would have to come up with why one team is the favorite in this game. Now, granted, just on your baseline, classification and division, China Springs going 2 divisions up here, right? So that makes it tough. But I mean, University, as good as they have been, their level is not past a state title contender in 4A D2 level, Like if they were going up against like Salina, like La Vega did last week, and I realized they're 4A D1, you wouldn't be like, oh, University, it would probably be hard to call, and you would probably give the edge to Salina there, right? So how far along has China Spring come? Because if they've come very far along, China Spring might be the favorite in this game. I'm not giving a whole lot of hard data on this question. I'm just
Well,
saying.
so I'm I'm listening to what DJ said about university as Levi, I think was the one who covered them last week,
Mhm.
mentioned they were they were kind of sloppy last week. They were sloppy in that game. And I think if both teams like play up to their potential, University should win just based on talent. Forget the classifications and all of that. They just have better players at this point.
If it
Uh,
comes down to their playmakers winning the game for them, University will do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if
Coach
University,
covered that game, not Levi, by the way.
okay, gotcha. If
Sorry.
if University is sloppy and beats itself, then that certainly opens up an avenue for China Spring. And I hear what you're saying, Chad. Maybe it's not a huge upset, but I still
Mhm.
think this China Spring team, I think we would be a little like, huh, okay. You know,
Well, I think like, for example, state poll voters, if China Spring were to go in there and win, they would be like, that's supposed to be a pretty good university team, and China Spring's only loss is to Franklin. So do
mhm.
we rank China Spring this week? Uh, Now I do want to like go back to my 20 years of experience of going to Waco ISD and covering university games through good times and bad times. But like, I feel like sitting there in the press box at Waco ISD Stadium from the high vantage point above the field, you sometimes get a very good taste of what high school football is. And high school football is not perfection. It's like, how
Mm.
can we minimize our mistakes and find a way to like make plays, right?
Yeah, no,
And there's
that's
been
fair.
times, yeah, and there's been times when University couldn't get out of its own way, right? I mean, there's been a lot. I mean, they're good, right? They're good right now. They look good, but let's not lie to ourselves. There's been a lot of years when they could not get out of their own way at all. I mean, they lost 42 in a row at one point, right?
Yeah.
So like, it's hard to get that University out of your head and make them a favorite against China. But that's what makes this game so interesting, is because University has a shot to beat China Spring.
Yeah, and not only to beat China Spring, but like I have said all season, I think that they're a sleeper team on the state level in terms of the 5A D2
Mm-hmm.
playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were kind of underrated, even just in Texas football's
Mm-hmm.
rankings for that district.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Trojans absolutely could win the district championship, you
Well,
know.
and that gets to maybe the heart of what we're talking about. A university team that plays clean football and gets its playmakers in position to make plays is a really good football team.
Right, right. And now, a lot of those guys are juniors and seniors. London's a
Mm-hmm.
junior, JD Bell's a senior,
Mm-hmm.
LD Evans is a senior, right? I think. Uh,
Yes, he's a senior.
Cade Bynum's a junior. So, I mean, those guys are upperclassmen. We need to start seeing them make that next jump. All right, let's move on. So, we can't have a fantasy football podcast without talking about stats. And just, I'm going to put it out there. We will have Stats Plus coming up next week. So, coaches, get your stats to us. I'm not going to ask you to draft an all classification fantasy team because if we did that, I would just take Jesse Lamb, Walnut Springs, number one, and then I would just walk away with the championship.
Well, but what if we had a 6-man division and an 11-man
Okay, well,
division?
I'd still take Jesse Lamb. He's got like 16 touchdowns or something in 2 weeks, or I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah,
Like going through stats the other or players of the week, I was like, what the heck is this kid doing?
yeah. Walnut Springs is a story. So I want to use this stat thing as kind of a a launching pad for a deeper conversation about stats. And of course, we have had this sort of debate for years when we pick Super Centex teams and stuff. But as you guys know, so if you're playing fantasy football in the NFL or whatever, regular fantasy football, if your quarterback throws 4 touchdown passes, it's the same whether they're playing the Eagles or the Cowboys or the Jaguars or whatever. I mean, obviously some defenses are better than others, and you do play guys based on matchups sometimes, but they're all NFL teams. They're all pros. But we here cover a lot of different classifications of high school football. And I would say not every 200-yard rushing game is the same. So, how do you, when you kind of are comparing monster stat lines, differentiate a kid from a 2A school to a 6A school?
I think there's a lot of nuance to that
Mm.
because, like, yes, the level of football is different. Like at a 6A school, you're bigger, you have more resources, you have a deeper roster, you also have more expenses, right? More pressure, I guess, because people assume, you know, you're at a higher level and you're up against schools like from the Dallas area and the Houston area and San Antonio and Austin. But I mean, I feel like football is football, right? Like I ask these kids all the time. Like when I talked to JD Bell and I was like, what's the difference between going from 2A to 6A? He's like, well, I mean, football is football. It's just stuff is bigger over here, right? Um, I really do think that you have to take all of those nuances into account. Like the level of the team that you're playing, the depth of the roster.
Uh-oh, DJ frozen or am I
DJ
frozen?
froze up.
You
Okay.
know,
Oh,
and
there she
and
goes.
also if
There
you
she goes.
yeah, you're gonna see the same guys putting up those monster stats because there's not a lot of other people, right? Like, and it does have to do a lot of with the team. When I was talking to Coach Gillespie this morning, I was asking him about Chauncey King, who's another kid that transferred from a 2A to a 6A. And he's leading the Panthers right now in tackles,
Mm-hmm.
2 games.
He's
But
he's played great as a guy who's watched their game. I also asked about Chauncey King after the game last night. Not to interrupt you, DJ, but uh, I think that's a perfect example of a kid who went from a 2A to a 6A, and the transition has not been too much for him. He's playing lights out.
And, part of that is because of the guys around him, like
Sure.
doing what they're supposed to do. And obviously he's going and making the plays that he needs to do. But also like when he was at Chilton, there was also guys around him there that were doing
Hmm.
what they were supposed to do. Because like Chilton still got Xavier Taylor, who's fantastic linebacker. Um, yeah, I feel like you can't really say, oh, one classification stats are diminished over another just because it's a bigger school. But at the same time, like I do get that, the level of competition is a little different in terms, you know, of you at a 6A, you have a bigger school, you have more resources, you have, bigger
Yeah, in
kids
essence, like
sometimes.
if you're playing in 6A, you got 6A guys blocking for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also have 6A guys trying to tackle
Trying
you.
to tackle you. Yeah. Yeah.
Chad, what do you say?
So at one reference point, Jonte Johnson a couple weeks ago for Whitney ran for 256 yards against Mart on 24 carries, and I was shooting the game and covering it like I do these days, and I knew he had a big game. I knew he had well over 100 yards. But then when I got the honor roll text from Whitney the next morning and it was like 256, I was like, oh, I didn't feel like 256, but on 24 carries, I guess it did. He was breaking them off in chunks.
That's still over 10 yards a carry.
Yeah, I know. And so uh I was telling a dad last week, I was like, as media people, we can't, I mean, we're not scouts. We can't like see a guy at 2A and I automatically know what he would do at 6A. It's hard to tell. Um, like, Fulbright for Midway used to have, these really great games in 6A, they were 6A then, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
And he was just, I mean, he was just 8 yards, 10 yards, 8 yards, 12 yards, and then he might break one for 30. But whenever I think of great high school running backs, and this kind of comes back to what does a great high school running back look like? I go back more than 25 years to where I was working with the Lubbock Avalanche Journal on Friday nights. And for whatever reason, a few times I got to see Andrews when Shad Williams played for Andrews. And Shad is in that Texas High School Football Hall of Fame now, played at Texas Tech under Spike Dykes for a year, and then went to Alabama. And Shad Williams would gain 240 yards on 8 carries. I mean, he was like, give him the ball and watch him go. It was amazing. And so that's my like gold standard for running back performances. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but I just always like to talk about Shad Williams.
Nice. So I think you both make some excellent points. Just to get it back to the question, I do look at uh 6A and 5A stats a little bit differently. To me, a guy maybe rushing for 120, 130 at a 6A or 5A school is
Mm-hmm.
maybe the equivalent of 180. I don't know, at a 2A or something, just because of the competition. But but at the same time, like when we pick Super Centex, um, we fortunately have a lot of freelancers, a lot of writers that work for us, and so we get to see a good chunk of these kids in Central Texas. And so I think we have a pretty good idea and can identify who the players are.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't trying to sell us out.
huh?
I wasn't trying to sell us out and
No,
saying it's
no.
hard to, yeah.
And like, Quan Cosby could play. Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Parkus at Rosebud Locke, 2A school
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, he could play. Rashad Paul, those are small school kids, but we could watch them play and go, dude's a stud. And, JD Bell was at Mart rushing for 42 touchdowns, and now he's contributing nicely for university. So
Well,
And
I
these
was
he
kids can
probably
having
play.
get the same stats at university that he got at Mart because there's other guys around him, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So
I was having this conversation with some kids this summer about Super Centex stuff and how he picked that, and these kids went to a big school, and I was like, look, you're right. Like your classmate that had a good season for your team this year, they had a good season, yeah. But like, and if they'd have been at Bosqueville, they might have been a superstar, right? If they'd have been at a smaller school, they might have been a superstar. Um, but the thing is, like, a lot of what we judge it on is how big of a difference maker were they? I mean, I think
Exactly.
that's, yeah.
And to your point, Chad, when we gathered last winter and picked the Super Centex team,
Mm-hmm.
um, we looked at our receivers. And if you just went on stats alone,
Mm-hmm.
London Smith didn't have the stats of some guys in lower classifications.
Right.
Uh, like, I feel good about who we picked at receiver. And um, and you stood up and were like, dude, we've got to have London Smith on the team. I mean, and you were
Mm-hmm.
right. I mean, like certain guys, um, it's just like, okay, you know, if we put London Smith on Mart, I mean, he would score 42 touchdowns, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep. And the thing is that even though London Smith didn't have video game stats like maybe somebody else did, you still watched a university game and he was a difference maker for their team.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I already know how you feel about my last question, but we're gonna roll with it anyway. So I say one of the best parts of fantasy football is the punishments. Um, so there's a league out there called the Tattoo League. ESPN did a story on them a few years back, hilarious, where the last place team had to get an embarrassing tattoo. I think one of them was a Care Bear. Um, yeah, that's pretty hardcore. In my league, we have what we call the renaming. where the champion gets to rename the last place team for the following season, and it's usually something derogatory, something about sometimes a lot of things I couldn't say here, but or just funny, just funny, just making fun of them somehow. Um, so my question is this: what would be a fun punishment for an 0-10 Central Texas team?
I mean, DJ, are you? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a sort of conflicting answer because on the one hand, I am a huge supporter and proponent that we need relegation in American sport.
Mm,
Yes, that
Um,
is true.
but I mean, at the high school level, maybe if like you go from like, oh, if you go 0-10, you're going down a division, maybe, that should be the way that we do that. But I
That
don't
was. I don't
like
know that that would be a punishment. Even I think that would just make sense.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I hate the term punishment because a lot of people uh like use the word discipline when they really mean punishment, right? And
Mm.
and so I'm not a fan of that. I'm like kids are gonna make mistakes, right? There are kids that are just not gonna be there are teams that are just not gonna be good for whatever reason. I don't think that there should be a punishment when you're already feeling bad about yourself for
Maybe the
losing.
instead of punishment, maybe the word I'm looking for, because I'm sorry, this is the best part of fantasy football is the trash talk. If you didn't
Yeah.
have trash talk in
I
fantasy
don't do
football,
No,
fantasy
no, no, no,
football.
no,
I
no,
don't
what
no,
have
the
the
heck are
emotional
you
no.
doing?
bandwidth for
The
fantasy
best part of
football.
fantasy football is to have some control over the universe, right?
You have a lot less than you think you do.
No, but I mean, like my emotional investment in my fantasy football team is really low compared to my emotional investment in my college team, and yet I can decide who plays quarterback for my fantasy team. You know, I can decide whether to start three running backs or four wide
See, I
receivers.
I'm so different. I mean, obviously, I want the Texans to win more than my fantasy team, and yet, uh, if my fantasy team loses, it can sour the whole weekend.
If your
I
fantasy
am
team,
that invested.
see, that's where I want to be. That's where I want to be because at least I had some stake in it. You know?
Well, like I said, maybe your league should have a punishment. Uh, Chad, you've heard of this. To me, this is like world class. Back when a team would beat another team in high school football, and
Uh,
and that coach would send the other team a UPS package of a basketball,
Basketball, yeah, that's
and
happened
I mean,
like
like
that's
pretty
what
recently.
it's like welcome to
Wilson and Mark.
basketball season.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I mean, that's some pretty good trash talk.
I like trash talk. But this world of like if Florida State loses to so and so, I'm gonna eat something gross out of a solo cup. Did you guys see that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
know what you're talking about,
it
but
was
I don't
on
think it was.
Twitter. And
Yeah,
by the
I don't
way,
think it was
Twitter is
that.
slowly ruining the world. Like the only good thing about Twitter is our Friday night, like Trib Friday night hashtag.
That's
Uh,
the only reason I still have Twitter. No, it was really funny because that dude deleted his account and then somebody
uh,
went and found his girlfriend's account and was like trying to like get to him. I was like, oh my gosh, this
if
is
you need proof of a fallen world, that's it.
I don't know. This is why I
Mhm.
don't base my, like how I feel off of how my sport. Like I love the Astros, but I have not watched half of the season because I know I'm gonna feel like I was watching the game last night and I was like, how are you gonna lose in extra innings on three bunts? Right?
Yeah.
I was like, to the A's, to the soon-to-be Sacramento A's. How are you gonna lose? Granted, they're playing better than they have been. There's the Astros are still going to make the playoffs, but
All right. Well,
I mean, a lot of times with
I'm
my
going to
favorite.
answer my own question. First of
Okay, yeah,
all,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
do appreciate the fact that you two maybe single-handedly are trying to bring civility back to America. While we've got a presidential debate that basically is a rap battle, just one side insulting the other, but
the
making up
memes that came out of that are amazing.
right. But here's what I'm gonna go with as my own punishment. So you get to 0-1, and then the next week, Maybe when you run through your run through sign, you also have to jump over a barbed wire fence. And then the week after that, it's like, maybe there's a crocodile or something, or
Let's not hurt
at,
the
at, to,
children,
at the
Brice.
end, basically the run through sign is on fire, and there's a brick wall on the other side.
Wait. You've overthought this. All you need is to let the team that beats you design your run through sign for the
Ooh,
next
I
week.
like it. I like it. Now you're getting into the spirit of it. All right. DJ, well, are both y'all going to the game tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal. China Spring University should be fun.
I mean, I don't know if I'll do any work, but I will see both those teams play, which I haven't yet this season.
Yeah,
So
that'd be awesome.
I
yeah.
just want Chad there to do stats for me so that I don't have to stress
Well,
out.
if I said, but see, I'm coming, I'm doing photos. I'm doing
Oh,
Oh,
something
right.
fun. I'm not doing your work for you.
Uh,
well, you could. You could help. Uh, Friday night, Chad, you're going to
Grandview Zebras at Connolly Cadets.
the zebras. You'll
Pretty
see
good
the
game.
zebra head. And DJ,
I will be going to Whitney for the Highway 81 battle with Hillsborough,
that'll be fun.
and
The
apparently to
Battle
get
of
some
Hill County.
Tex-Mex.
I just looked up. It's 16 miles between those two schools.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, that's always a fun rivalry. I'll
I'm
be
gonna
at
stop by
Midway
Bucky's
again.
too.
Hmm?
I'll be at Midway
I'm gonna
again
stop by
for
Bucky's
Leander
on the way back.
Rouse. Yeah. So should be fun. And make sure you bring home a win for the local team, or you never know what
Hey,
punishment.
we need to do our
Well,
Friday
I
night
mean,
after dark at that Bucky's one of these because there's so many schools. I bet coming in and out of there. It would be fun just to see all the different
We can
mascot
interview kids
T-shirts.
as they're going into Bucky's.
Exactly,
I like
exactly.
it. I like it. All right. See y'all.
bye.